President Trump taking aim at a 24-year-old law that once cleared internet companies from being legally responsible for what its users post. Section 230 of the 1996 Communications Decency Act, giving them this protection, may now be in question. For that protection to be removed, Congress would have to act, a move that's been a long time coming.
Americans who I think are deeply concerned that Facebook and other tech companies are engaged in a pervasive pattern of bias and political censorship.
Members of Congress on both sides of the aisle have called for more accountability from platforms like Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, with hearing after hearing after hearing after hearing.
Twitter and other social media platforms must do more to regain and maintain the public trust.
Even Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg has called for more regulation, but Congress has done little about it.
This is a little bit like the tobacco industry learning that cigarette smoking causes cancer, but turning a blind eye to it. Congress wasn't educated enough to know how to make that first step and what this looks like.
Many say Section 230 is the reason we have sites like Facebook, Yelp, YouTube, and Twitter. Others argue it allows for things like exploitation or violent content to be posted by a user without a site being responsible for cleaning it up.
They can be used for evil at home and abroad.
Many Republicans who typically otherwise oppose government regulation of private companies want Congress to act on the president's order.
Committees should have hearings on this and be able to look before they draft legislation.
Others say it's a potentially dangerous step that may address the president's personal grievance, but fails to solve a larger issue.
Idaho is preparing for Phase 3 of Governor Little's Idaho Rebound Plan during the pandemic. In Phase 3, bars, breweries, and wineries will be allowed to reopen, and so will water parks and splash pads. That is welcome news with temps in the upper 90s in the forecast. However, there are strict guidelines that must be followed to make the transition.
There's guidance out there. Generally, a rule of thumb, being outside where there's a lot of UV light is better than being inside. You've got to have a much higher standard for a bathroom, but we have to have standard for bathroom for restaurants, for all these other areas. That's where any place where they're congregated, where those transmissible moments goes up. And so that guidance is out there. And I know that the operators are very concerned about it. And, you know, some cities, they've decided not to open their pools, other ones they have.
In Phase 3, nightclubs will be allowed to reopen with tight restrictions. There can be no dancing, live entertainment, highly regulated. People will not be allowed to gather near a stage. The minimum 6-foot social distancing rule must be followed at all times. Nightclubs can open as long as they operate like a bar. However, no mingling.
I told my team that I see in the guidance, no mosh pits. I told them how disappointed I was that I couldn't go to a mosh pit. Whatever a mosh pit is, but the issue is transmissible moments. If you're in a bar or a restaurant and you're spaced out, your risk is lower. If you're in a nightclub where you're concentrated a lot more, or even a bar where you're concentrated a lot more, that's where your exposure is a lot more. So it's all about the transmissibility of this and exposure.
The hope for everybody is that we can continue on the rebound plan, but as things loosen up, we all need to continue to wear masks, sanitize, and practice social distancing. If not, there is a risk of a rise in coronavirus cases. If it's not done right, the state could lock things down again.
And we've got a lot of places in Idaho where they have zero or no healthcare capacity. We need to remind ourselves, it seemed like it was years ago, but when this started 80 days ago, we ran out of healthcare capacity in the Wood River Valley, the Magic Valley, and we had to have overflow here into the Treasure Valley. We don't want that to happen.
Brian Morin, CBS 2 News.
More than 141,000 Idahoans have filed for unemployment during the coronavirus pandemic, and many laid-off workers are still waiting for the benefits that they are due. CBS 2's Scott Logan has been working to get answers for people across his state. Today, he again asked Governor Little about the delays.
Entering Stage 3 as planned is critical for Idaho's jobless, the governor said, because health and the economy are interconnected. Governor Brad Little again lamented the delay many Idahoans are encountering in getting their unemployment benefits.
I'm not making any excuses. It's unacceptable. We're doing all we can.
And the governor says there are plans to bring in call centers to address the biggest complaint we've heard. That's the inability to get in touch with the overwhelmed Labor Department. 19 claims specialists have been added, the governor said, but he has no idea when the state will get caught up with claims.
What I can't tell you, and what I keep asking, is what date are we going to be caught up? Primarily for several reasons.
Governor Little said one reason it's taking time to process claims is to avoid what's been happening in Washington state, fraudulent claims.
We saw what happened in the state of Washington, where there was an enormous amount of fraud. A lot of money went to hackers from the African continent, and we have in our state laws a very high degree of integrity that we want in the system to make sure the system works.
Governor Little said he thinks about Idaho's jobless when he goes to bed at night and when he wakes up in the morning. But he also says he realizes that's of little consolation to those folks who are unemployed right now. In Boise, Scott Logan, CBS 2 News.
Local bars in Boise are responding differently to the governor's reopening plan. Bars like Press and Pony and the Handlebar in Boise are opening at different times.
Yeah, we're getting rid of all our glassware so that there's less interaction between the guests. So they will have a trash can at each table so they can throw away their own glassware. And then we can basically have less interaction, and we'll still sanitize the table and everything afterwards, but we won't have glassware that we are worried about.
The bar will also be first come, first serve with no bar top seating. A maximum of 6 people will be allowed for each table. But for Cocktail Bar Press and Pony, the management says they're planning on taking extra time to reopen.
Well, our timeline is still planning on going to open more in June, not on the 1st, but probably to the beginning to mid-June. It was always in our plan to just take extra time. We are owned through Boise Fry Companies, so as part of their franchises, we are following all of their guidelines and policies, limiting contact, keeping lobbies closed, no access to bathrooms, stuff like that for now. We're just strictly doing to-go cocktails.